Good day and welcome to Fantasy World. My name is Kavish Rajkumar and I will be your designated teacher on your journey in acquiring knowledge in understanding the research onion by Saunders, Lewis, and Thornhill. Here is a special mention to Minecrafters who created Fantasy World. Here's a setup board to ensure students have the best player experience. Let's get started. Here we see the 6 layers that make up the onion model. Let's enter layer 1, research philosophy. Research philosophy can be split between an ontological or epistemological point of view. We can choose between 2 paths for further explanation. We meet Prof. X, who further explains that epistemology is concerned with the validity, scope, and methods of acquiring knowledge. Move on to the mirrored side. Prof. X explains that ontology is concerned with what actually exists. If you notice, these 2 rooms are mirrored images of each other. That is because at the beginning of a research, it is difficult to know which philosophy point of view you would like to follow. So at this point, it is good to keep an open mind and consider both points of view. Let's continue. Notice the aquarium beneath us. It demonstrates that just as there are many types of fish in the sea, there are many types of research philosophies. Let's explore the 3 presented before us. First, positivism. Positivism takes an objective point of view where knowledge can only be acquired through empirical research, which is based on measurements and observation. Prof. X explains that the demonstration is about how fire is formed. Through the combination of oxygen, fuel, and heat, we can observe the creation of fire. This is factual and is determined through observation and can be recreated. Moving on, we enter interpretivism. Interpretivism emphasizes the influence that social and cultural factors can have on an individual. This view focuses on people's thoughts. The study conducted here is that participants were asked what their feelings towards the color purple were. We can interact with them to get their answers and then compare them to our interpretation. Moving on to the next room, pragmatism. This approach aims to reach from a practical perspective where knowledge is not fixed but is constantly questioned and interpreted. This experiment conducted is where you can decide on either doing away with one zombie or to save multiple. Because this experiment can be altered, for example, one zombie or the group being family members or loved ones. The fact that the experiment can be altered is an example of pragmatism. Let's move on to layer 2, research approach. The research approach is split between inductive or deductive approaches. Inductive is generating theory through research, whereas deductive begins with a theory and aims to test. Fascinating. Entering the elevator to deductive, let's proceed. Deductive research is a theory-driven hypothesis, which is tested and observed to confirm or refute the hypothesis. The theory here is that animals reproduce when fed in the Minecraft world. The hypothesis is cows reproduce when fed hay. Interesting, but let's test it. We can feed the cows to observe if this is true. Wow, it seems we can confirm that the hypothesis is true. Amazing. Moving on, it seems like we can go back to inductive approach. Take notice of the elevators. Deductive is about diving deeper into a topic, going down the elevator, whereas inductive is about getting a broader perspective, as is going up. Let's take the elevator to inductive approach. We see some familiar faces. It looks like Prof. X and Prof. Y are arguing about what factors are involved that influence trust. We can use this as a learning experiment on inductive reasoning. It is up to us to choose which professor's door we go through and who we trust more. Within an inductive approach, we observe, search for a pattern, create a tentative hypothesis, and then generate a theory. Based on that, we observe that Prof. X and Prof. Y are dressed well. The pattern is that Prof. X has been with us throughout our journey by providing knowledge. The hypothesis is that trust is gained through experience and appearance, and our theory is that for the professor to be trusted, they must ensure consistent interaction and dress appropriately. Based on that, we can determine that Prof X's door is the correct one. Before we move on, qualitative and quantitative research is an important factor in inductive and deductive approaches. These two houses in front of us explain both concepts. Let's enter quantitative research. It is expressed in numbers and graphs, and it is used to test or confirm theories and assumptions. Fascinating. Moving on to qualitative research is expressed in words, and it is used to understand concepts, thoughts, or experiences. Interesting. In this layer, we should specifically take notice of the colors. The quantitative roof is black, and the qualitative roof is white. Let's continue to layer 3, research strategy. The board explains what to expect in the villages across the bridge. The villages are split into 3 colors, each color representing a different research strategy. Let's cross. We enter the blue village, where Prof X is conducting experimental research. Experimental research is manipulating one variable to observe a change in another variable to assess the relationship between variables. The experiment is conducted is to determine if a healthy diet is essential. House 1, the participants were given a well-balanced diet, and House 2 was given a sugar and carb-based diet. In House 3, it shows the results, and we can determine that a healthy, well-balanced diet is necessary. If you noticed, the blue houses have a black roof, which represents quantitative research. Moving to the green village, a case study research is performed by Prof X. A case study is an in-depth study of a single subject where the researcher takes the social context and culture into account. The experiment conducted is to answer the research question, which is gamification in education effective? House 1 has participants and their opinions, and House 2 has the concluded results. Based on the participants' feedback, gamification has a positive effect in education. Notice that the roofs in Green Village are white, which represents qualitative research. Moving on, we have one more village to visit. A quantitative survey is conducted in the red village, which is defined as objective, close-ended questions used to gain detailed insight. The participants were asked about their experience in Fantasy World. The research question is detailed in the journal, seems to be using the Likert scale rating from 1 to 5. Based on the participants' responses, we can see that most users have had a positive experience in Fantasy World. Notice the roof. The color is black, which represents a quantitative research. Let's move on to the next layer. Layer 4, research choices, which is important that it involves the process of deciding how many data types you will need to use in your research. There are 3 main choices, which are mono method, mixed method, and multi-method. Mono method is choosing one method that could be quantitative. For example, that could be the red village, that is quantitative. Mixed could be a combination of 2 methods, which could be quantitative or qualitative. For example, the blue village and the green village. The last option is multi-methods, which is 3 or more methods that are used, which means in your research you could use a case study research, experimental research, and a quantitative survey research. From this platform, you are able to see the different colored villages in the previous layer and the association it has with this layer in determining what type of data to collect. Let's move on to layer 5, time horizon. The time horizon describes how many points in time you plan to collect data at. There are 2 options, longitudinal and cross-sectional. Longitudinal time horizon collects data over a multiple points in time. Let's look at the demonstration. Prof. Botnick is conducting an experiment in observing the growth of bamboo in an underwater structure over an extensive period of time and collecting data at multiple points in that time. We can see that this experiment has lasted 6 years and Prof. Botnick has been observing the bamboo shoots since it has been planted. Moving over to cross-sectional time horizon, which is data that is collected at a certain point in time. Prof. Botnick is demonstrating an accelerated growth effect of bone meal on plants in the current moment in time. As we can see that the growth of plants is a lot quicker, we can perform this experiment as well. That's interesting. Moving on to the next layer. Layer 6. Research techniques and procedures. You now enter the core of the Onion model, a self-learning environment where it is up to you to determine what data to collect, who are you going to collect it from, and how are you going to use it. By using the knowledge you acquired on the way. In this layer we have data collection, which is deciding what data to collect, whether it is qualitative or quantitative in nature, and the data collection method, which could be surveys or interviews. Moving on, we have sampling, which is deciding on the specific group of individuals where data will be collected from. And lastly, data analysis, which is the process of systemically applying statistical or logical techniques to describe and illustrate, condense and recap and evaluate data. Data analysis is different depending on your research approach, whether it is quantitative or qualitative. That leaves us to the end of our journey through the 6 layers. Now that you have acquired knowledge on the Onion model in your journey, it's time to do the research quiz to test your understanding and knowledge of each layer. Be careful, one wrong choice will send you straight back to the beginning of the quiz. Now that you have reached the end, on behalf of the Minecrafters, I hope you enjoyed Fantasy World and have a greater understanding on how to conduct a research. If not, don't worry, this pathway to the left will get you back to the beginning, which will allow you to go through the adventure again. Maybe you missed something. Thank you.